Hello everybody, my name is Roque Gagliano. I'm a technical solution architect in the MEA region. So I know if you're in Europe, probably you know me. If you're not in Europe, probably first time we see. So I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different because, during the day we've been talking more to managers, we've been talking to developers, we've been talking to maybe network engineers who are planning use cases. But there is a very important persona for us also that, of course, NSO is an application. As an application, you need to, of course, Lifecycle manage itself. So there is this IT persona that is important on how do we go and actually manage NSO. And to be really honest, this is a place where actually the knowledge is more in your side sometimes than what's in our side. Because you are the ones running NSO in production. You are the one dealing with databases which are large or constructs that we may not have in our test cases. And actually you are the ones who are up to date with the latest IT trends and tooling that needs to be done. So I think this is an area where we really need your inputs. So if there is something that we need to improve in what we are doing, correct, in the features we put in place and how easy we think it is to manage some of the steps we've seen, I think it's very important for us to get your feedback. And that's why we have now on the developer hub, the idea is that in the coming days we're going to be looking at getting more and more feedback. For example, writing some blogs and trying to get you guys to bring us out your ideas. We're thinking about doing also some surveys on these issues to really bring back your knowledge on what you think we should be improving in this area. And I'm very happy to have this conversation with you. There is on Thursday some mid-engineering time that you need to actually sign up. There's an email, I think. And we actually booked some specific slots to discuss some of the issues on this presentation. Okay? So I'm really keen to discuss this, but again, please be aware that you are the ones running NSO production. We need your feedback, and you are the ones also who are in touch a lot with this, best practices from IT perspective than us, correct? And IT is actually in transformation, correct? Because really, traditionally for us, IT has been about basically asset management, correct? You have something like an application, you need to put it into production, you need to maintain it, you need to update it, etc. But of course, what we've seen is that we still need to do asset management, but now we also have the whole world regarding DevOps coming up, and we've seen a lot of stuff in Developers Day, and everybody, most of the customers telling us how important it is to adopt basically continuous testing, continuous integration, of course. Then you got, if you want, continuous delivery. So, of course, this means that the requirements from IT, from us as an application, is really changing also. However, we're going to be focused today more on the more still managing NSO as an asset, because that's even dependently on how you deploy or how fast you deploy the application, you still need to monitor it, you still need to audit, you still need to check the performance, correct? So that doesn't change. However, of course, we do have that world that is coming up, and that's why when the developers are thinking about DevOps, of course, they need to integrate IT on it, because particularly for the continuous delivery piece, that's a big part of that, correct? Can I go and deliver faster and follow the IT process? Now, my conversation will be I won't be talking today about how DevOps changed a little bit IT. I'm going to be focusing more from the traditional asset management, and actually at this time I think there was another DevOps conversation, and so you can watch the recording afterwards probably. So what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the stuff where you can get information, some of the stuff you may know, but also some of the new features and new things coming up in NSO. So really like the best practices, looking at going through a review of different topics, but really looking also for you in the Q&A section to give us as much feedback as possible. And of course, my hope is to have this, to have a space in this conversation every year, and hopefully next time it's more sharing also best practice from you, where the really best practice resides, correct? So we're going to be talking about installation, security, management of the application, particularly performance, and a very important topic, which is the upgrade of the platform, okay? So before we start, there's something called the administration guide, and I hope everybody has read it, but before you start any work on NSO, please read it. You know, I know we are like, I know it's very simple NSO to install in your laptop, but when you go to a real production environment, there's a lot of very important information in that guide. Particularly, there is a special section called the deployment guide, where we put effort to try to show you what do you need to do to actually bring it into a real deployment. When we do real deployment, remember it's a system installation, it's not a local installation, certain things changes. So you have to make this guide your place to land. Also because of the new features or the new enhancement we do, we typically will document that in that guide. So that's the place where typically an IT person will be looking at. Now, as I said, you know, there's a chapter that we created that's called the deployment chapter, and I think it's a very good guide, really focused on, okay, I want to put it in production, step by step, what you should look at, what should be actually your key focus, and that's a key piece that before you start, you need to make sure you look at. And we're not going to cover all the points there, correct? Now, when you install NSO as a in production system install, here is a little bit update on what's coming up, and I know some of you read in the change files of the latest version. There's some warnings or things are changing. And I think it was a good opportunity to review that. Actually, it's not us, but there's certain requirements that you're going to read, but there's certain things that are changing. So if you are managing NSO platform, be aware, because your hosting environment, your Linux environment, you may need to do some changes. There's some changes in Java, particularly, you see Java 6, particularly is basically changes, so we need at least, and actually in the guide, although we push for Java 6, we allow Java 6, we recommend to do Java 7, but actually also Java 7 is going particularly out of support, so there is this need to upgrade your Java VMs. The other big point is regarding to Python. So Python 2.7 is actually going end of life from end of support from a Python community perspective. So that would mean that we know that NSO can run in 2.7 or 3, 3.3 or more bigger. So you really need to think of moving to 3. Not just because of NSO. Anything you do in Python, correct, from a support perspective, is moving there. So there will be a point where there's no more support, and actually NSO, the newer version may require you to have higher versions. Okay, so that's an important point for you to remember. Okay, again, not us. It's really that the community is stopping supporting this version. So these are big changes. Now, when we install, one of the discussions I have many times with customers is, I'm going to install NSO. Where do we install it? Is it bare metal? Is it VM? Is it container? All right. One of the things is, we distribute it just like a install bin file, all right? And actually, as long as you have a hosting environment, it can be either of them. One interesting thing is the three of them are, if you want to support it in a way that you can go to TAC and issue a ticket. And actually, for a long time, I was in the impression that we didn't support container production installation, but I got corrected by our support people that they actually do support tickets when you have installations in containers. Of course, the Darwin is not for production, correct? Now, one of the things is it's interesting when I have, because typically the guy who is in the procurement process of NSO is not the IT person. So when I go and talk to IT, say, okay, we got this application, they come, okay, what resources you need, and we start discussing. Of course, NSO, it's an in-memory database, correct? So it's memory. If you look at the footprint, it's really about the memory, correct? Of course, the CPU has an impact, and actually it's a little bit, it's gonna be up and down over time. And in disk is more related to what's your backup policy. but always discussions about the memory, correct? And the amount of memory you may need depending on installation sometimes make the decision if you go bare metal or you go VM or not. Because there's a lot of environment where the IT environment of this for IT applications, they have like you have like a fixed catalog of VMs that you're going to be supporting, and maybe you come back and say, hey, I want 64 gig. Oh no, the maximum is 32. But actually, my hardware, my servers only have 96. I'm not going to give you a VM for that, and then I got to dedicate a server for you. I'd rather give you a bare metal server. So we have many times these discussions, and it's really connected to is your IT environment ready for more in-memory type of VM? And sometimes what I need to explain that is I show kind of like the catalog for AWS, where there are of course special VMs requirement for in-memory database applications. And the discussion sometimes goes very well because people say, hey, you're like Hadoop, I know this is how I do it, correct? And they already have that very well. They may have a zone in the data center when they do memory-heavy applications, or they have already made the plan that for memory-heavy applications they go bare metal. Sometimes it goes a little bit harder because I'm into discussions. Oh, you're not cloud ready, and kind of those more religious discussions. But what's important is that when sometimes we got into this discussion because my IT environment can only run or can only allow me 32 gig of memory, but I have 40,000 devices, correct? And I'm going to have many, I'm going to have very big NSO that I want to scale the memory. They're like, oh, I'm going to go LSA just because I don't have VMs in my catalog which are ready for in-memory applications. And it's really, be very cautious, of course, that there's a very high tax when you move from a single NSO, correct, into an LSA, and doing that big step, correct, in terms of operational management, just because you don't have enough memory in a server, it's a little bit, I think, a big issue. So yes, we can do horizontal and vertical scaling, but particularly for your initial installation, if you can do everything in one server, I think that will save you a lot of initial pain that you shouldn't be paying in your first deployment. And of course, then it says, okay, what's the right sizing of NSO? And unfortunately, the question is depends, and depends on a lot of things. And people keep asking us, give us tables, give us, and there's so many things, and things are in our control, but there's a lot of things that are outside of our control. That if you are going there and develop stuff, and I guess hopefully everybody saw the performance presentation yesterday. There's a lot of things on how you do. The complexity of your services, the length of the configuration of your devices, the number of devices, do you use commit queues, a lot of stuff. One of the things that it's interesting on performance, and that's what we do regarding performance testing on the application, is actually to create a benchmark, if you can, correct? And then actually what you're trying to do is actually compare with your benchmark. So if things do not change in your networks and you have an initial install, you know how it performs normally, so you do a benchmark, you know how it performs normally, and then you can continue to do the same test as you change your services, just to make sure that you are not you're not doing something that could affect performance. But really, at the beginning when we do sizing, it's very hard, of course. We do have some ideas based on experience on memory size, for example, of large network, short networks, etc. But of course, it's very hard to come with a table, correct? So really, if we want to, this is exactly what we're doing. We have performance testing labs, but it's not to get a table of exactly what's the sizing, to have some idea, but also to know, we do the same test we did with 4.7, we do it with 5. How does it compare? Is the delta what's important, correct? Now, of course, we're going to another very interesting topic, which is high availability. And of course, NSO supports high availability, but NSO works in an active standby mode, okay? Because of course, the application itself self-contains the database. And one of the points is that you can have many standbys. It doesn't need to be one, and we have a lot of customers who do that. They have a hot standby, for example, in one data center, and a second standby in a faraway data center for disaster recovery. All right. Now, one important point is that HA from our what we call it's kind of hard for us here to say cluster, HA cluster, because clustering used to mean something else in NSO. But okay, HA pair, so we call it HA pair. So if you got an HA pair, there's a strict control regarding the versioning, not just of NSO, but also of the different packages. So they have to run the same packages, right? Now, there are different levels, let's say, of what you can do with NSO regarding HA. And I think it's very important to know this because, people go straight to what is my use case. I want high availability, I want a lot of stuff, right? I want everything to work automatically. But, it doesn't mean that everything has to be done off the shelf in NSO, okay? So there are a lot of tools in the IT environment that you can reuse to get you the high availability you want. And many times it makes sense of some of the features not to use NSO for that. And let's discuss a little bit that. So there's a basic HA support. So you go with NSO and you tell NSO, hey, I'm in HA in the configuration file, and HA comes to life, okay? So the basic support, it's a protocol that we have. It's a homegrown protocol between the active and the standby where, there's a heartbeat every certain amount of minutes. The standby will check that it has the latest version of the database, and when it first boots, it actually can load and be in sync, okay? And when a commit happens, as part of that commit, the changes are sent to the HA, to the standby. The standby knows that it's in standby, so it doesn't try to program the devices, etc., etc. So that is the basic thing. It comes with NSO, with the platform when you install NSO. One of the things is that it has an API, but that API actually, for example, if you want to say you are the active or you are standby, that API typically is in Python or Java, so it's not available outside of the box. But still possible for you to write your own HA application on top of this API and create actions, create whatever you want in a package. All right. So that's what we have for a long time, and actually that's enough if you want to write your own HA logic. All right. Now, for a couple of years, we are actually adding an add-on package that comes actually included in your license. It's an add-on package, which is called the HCC. And the thing with this package is that it actually do two things. And we're going to discuss that a little bit. So the first thing it does is to those, let's say, HA API that you have in Python and Java, it provides you more of a node-one API that you can run in RESTconf or netconf or JSON RPC, where you can take a node and say you are active, you are standby, correct? And that's useful, correct? Particularly if you have a node-one system, you already have all of that code done. That's great, so I can run it directly. But it also does a second thing, which is related with another topic related with HA, because I can have HA in terms of making sure that I have a replica of the database of NSO, but not having automatic switchover. What I mean is, I can have HA, but if the master goes down, I have a manual process to get the standby actually working as the master. And of course, operationally, it's a very simple process, and for many customers, that's good enough, correct? So you don't need these automatic switchovers between hot standby. And I'm saying this, of course, because on top of, so there are customers who are not running, let's say, customer portals, correct? And that's enough. But we do have customers who do run customer portals. who are running NSO, for example, in environments like virtualization, when you get notifications, or in environments like they want to do closed loop stuff, etc., where actually it's critical to have a much high availability. So when the master comes down, they want the standby actually to turn up, to transform itself as an active NSO instance. To do that, actually, the HCC package has an implementation that allows you to do that. It actually has two implementations. One of them is when you are sharing, both of them you are sharing the same LAN. It has the idea of a virtual IP. So with a virtual IP, again, you can take control of that virtual IP in the hot or the standby, depending on which one actually thinking is the standby. Now, one of the things with automatic switchover, particularly when you have this active standby applications, is the problem of the split brain. And again, it's something we need to explain many times, because when the slave thinks that the master is off, you're in the same line, so you're using the virtual IP. Hopefully the layer 2 is not broken. So what ended up happening is that when the standby takes over the same IP, the virtual IP, it's going to start working, but at one moment maybe the master is again available. So in NSO, because again, when I boot up, I don't know why, in what environment I'm booting. I don't know why I reboot. I don't know that, correct? So by default, what happens is we take the most conservative approach, which is that, when you reboot, you're going to reboot in a known state, so you're not going to be a slave, you're not going to be master, and you don't take over that domain. Now, we do get these questions sometimes on, why do not go back as, with certain more logic? But of course, that's the biggest worry, correct? So of course, if the master goes down, it creates alarms, and somebody needs to make sure to fix the problem, correct? Of course, the standby is working, and maybe if you got a second standby also, it can make it that work. But this idea of the split brain, or the how do you decide which is the master and which is the slave, it brings us back to what is typically our first recommendation, and that has to do that in an IT environment, typically you will have HA frameworks that deals with not just NSO, but any applications, either by using DNS or routing or something, correct? And those are more typically a more robust solution, because they are looking at NSO from an outside view. So they are more closer to the, let's say, the client of NSO, looking at NSO from outside, and they know which of the two is accessible, correct? So, and they know also why certain, one of the two pairs actually went out, and if it is safe or not to make it back, and how to make it back. So, we have a lot of customers that, yes, you may use TLFC and HCC only for getting the API, but then you run, DNS-based like Infoblox or F5 or many of these, GSS systems that with DNS and which API call, with health check, they have all the technology to basically make this decision, and to make that also in a layer 2 or layer 3, it doesn't matter. It's basically an IP address for them, but they can manage. So that's of course safer, because from outside you have a better view of what's going on, just like a satellite will have a better view to measure for example, the weather information on Earth, all right? Now, we do have in HCC also an implementation for if you don't have, let's say you want HA, you want automatic switchover, you want layer 3 automatic switchover, you don't have an external framework. So with all of that, and you still want NSO to fix it for you. So we also have in HCC a way to do that based on routing, but that means that you need to run a routing instance in the NSO application. Remember that to do layer 3 switchover, there's only two ways you can do it. It's either DNS or routing. There's not, unless you have a load balancer, but if you've got a load balancer taking the traffic, you don't need any of this. Now there is that, of course, that adds some operational complexity, because now you have a router in the NSO applications to manage. Okay? What we've done is actually created in the package through a net from automatic configuration of the BGP configuration that we need. Of course, many customers running BGP to an application inside a data center is already a no-go from a IT policy perspective. So as you see, HA is it's quite a topic, all right? But it's important for me, I think, to understand that there's different level of discussion, correct? The basic HA, which is, can I replicate my database, correct? Can I make sure the master and slave are, with the same version of the database? The second one is, can I give APIs to enable, correct, an HA framework, particularly when I want either manual or automatic switchover. And if I want automatic switchover, typically my first recommendation will be, do you have already a framework? Because this won't be a problem only for NSO. It will be a problem for many of your applications. So if you have it, just reuse it. If you don't have it, we have some basic capabilities in HCC. It may be enough for you to run it or not. Okay? But of course, there's a limit on what we can do from an NSO perspective, because we are in Earth looking at the clouds. We are not a satellite looking at the whole planet and understanding everything that's going on with the weather. So that was a long one. Now, one of the things is, particularly when you are thinking about packages, and here, of course, the installation port we can mix a little bit with the continuous delivery discussions, but when you look at particularly an LSA environment, let's say, or an HA environment, you got packages and you need to distribute to many NSOs. You need to do packet reloading, distribute it, etc. So I guess this is, again, as an IT perspective, you have tools to do this for other applications. Many of them have IT tools such as Puppet, Chef, Ansible. Create, you will have to create some of those playbooks. There are examples in the development hub. I think that's a place where we can also share knowledge regarding that. But I just want to point out that, I don't know if everybody's aware that we distribute with NSO a little tool called NCT, and actually it has an abstraction for all of this. So even if you write your Ansible playbooks, it could be that one good option is for Ansible actually to call NCT. Right? Because that has already the way that connects to NSO, packet reload, all of that is just already coded in that application. So take a look, it may be useful for you to use, but if not, of course, you can continue using the tools you are ready to use. Typically, that's the best recommendation. So actually in the guide, most of the examples are based on NCT. So RESTconf. One of the points from a Nova perspective actually is that we're pushing very hard for people to start adopting RESTconf as their default RESTful interface on top of NSO. And but we know many of you have integrations with legacy REST. I know there was a notice in the latest version. Some of you already got me yesterday on the. But we know that it's not something simple to get that we're going to ask you to remove. But really, if you are looking at any future integration, RESTconf from a RESTful perspective, and if I'm a developer, not one of NSO, you don't even need to tell me it's called RESTconf. For me, it's a RESTful API, okay? But from an innovation perspective, it has a lot of features I think are very interesting and makes you really want to go there. We have a problem, which is the documentation. I told engineering that if you take our normal API documentation, we got 50 pages on the legacy REST. And for RESTconf, basically tells you go and read the RFC. So, of course, the developer has all the examples in REST, in the legacy REST, so they're going to develop that one. But the reason is, of course, because the legacy REST it was proprietary, let's say, so we need to give examples on how things we're doing. So we are going to fix that actually in the coming release. But you see the number of features, correct? First, alignment with the standard, and the promise here's the promise is if you got a standard API, your normal interface could have a generic RESTconf adapter. Now work with NSO on any other application. So that's the That's the dream, correct? That the NSO API would be equal to any, as a plumbing interface, equal to any other RESTconf. But there are very interesting stuff, token-based authentication, so you can do even think about single sign-on. We're expanding that to other APIs, like the Web UI and other. The patch media type, I don't know if you're familiar with that, that's also an RFC. Very interesting. In one RESTconf call, I can actually do many, let's say, I can do a create and a date and a delete in one call. And that would be translated in NSO in one single transaction. Okay? So very, very interesting. And that's only available there. The other point interesting, with RESTconf you get notifications, events, all right? Just like with netconf, it would be the same, from a JSON perspective, it's the same encoding, same event, but you get access to those event streams. You get the get schema. We added a Swagger plugin. So again, I'm a developer on top of NSO. If you need to give me a description of the API, if we use RESTconf, you just give me the Swagger. And how you create a Swagger for your service, you take the YAML of your service, and we got a plugin that's on the guide, Younger, minus options of Swagger, etc. It creates automatically the Swagger documentation for the YAML model you created. Okay. And finally, there's one thing that the standard didn't have, which is the query API we have in the legacy REST, but we actually created extensions that the standard allows for Cisco to allow that feature also. So you're not going to lose that feature neither. So you do have that too. So yeah, so please, there's enough. I think there's not just the number of features in RESTconf, but also anything new we are pushing it into RESTconf and not the legacy REST. So security. So this is a big topic because as customers NSO actually gets to be more and more critical. We got a lot of customers running security penetration tests. We get a lot of requests, a lot of comments, and many times it's not top of mind with you. But a good thing is, we've done I think enough penetration tests with customers to be very comfortable on where we are. The other point is this is one big advantage of being part of the Cisco family. The internal security policies are extremely tough. So Cisco has this development process, secure development process, but also has a lot of penetration tests which are internal in Cisco policies, Cisco SSL libraries, a lot of stuff that force us to be in line. So that's very important. But most of the time when customers come back with security penetration issues, it has to do with mastering the NSO configuration. And there, I think one of the biggest issues we have there is that many people think that everything you can do for the NSO configuration are the options which are in the skeleton or the NCS.conf file. So many times when you create an NSO installation, there's a default configuration file, correct, with certain value, but it doesn't have all the possible options. Actually, if you do a man or the NCS.conf, there are many more options to program NSO. And of course, the man page today is the biggest documentation area. But it's very, this is hundreds and hundreds of options. And of course, we need to masterize what you need for your installation. And there are a couple of things we know you need to take care, correct? For example, IPC security. Here it's interesting because I am an IT guy. I have root access to NSO. But if you are an administrator of NSO application, you may have admin and full access on the application, but not in NSO, correct? In the server. Now, IPC port in NSO, which is the famous NCS CLI command, think of it as a console port, correct? So you can access it as long as you have access to that command inside the server. So one of the things you need to secure is from where you can access the IPC port. There are configurations on kind of like ACL. And for example, you can only do that from localhost. Okay, then you need to be careful. But the other point is who has access to actually go and call the command to call the IPC, correct? And that has to do with the permissions inside the Linux server. That's important because the IPC port actually overrides some of the NACM rules, and actually the person who connects the IPC actually is not authenticated and can authenticate with any customer, so with any username. And that's by default, again, a console port, an emergency port to allow you to do basically, if you got a problem with AAA, you call IPC and you can solve things, you know. So, but of course it needs to be secure. Now, authentication typically also jumps into IT guys to help us leading with that. We do have a very extensive way to do, but of course, it requires you to do a little bit of scripting and helping us implementing that for your use case. There's authorization rules. Sometimes that's also managed by IT and not by the administrator of NSO. That depends. One thing with the NHCM rules is that the system install are different than local. Typically, in system install by default, you cannot do anything, correct? While in local install by default, you can do everything, correct? Now, logs, interesting, you need to remember, for example, to configure the log rotation. Okay, and that's done by, again, a Linux log rotation program. Normal APIs, you need to go and program that. The Linux system, you need to make sure. And of course, in the HA framework, there's one configuration that is the token. Again, from security perspective, it has to be unique. Now, one of the things you can never forget is about the keys, correct? Because there's a lot of keys that NSO is going to use. Some of them are related with when you have a YAML model that has an encrypted message, like encrypted list, like a password, correct? So that's going to be stored, that's going to be encrypted in the database, correct? But to encrypt that, that's a symmetrical encryption. Of course, you need a key, and that key is in the NSO configuration file. Actually, we now support that key to be stored externally, starting in the latest version. But what's important is that you need to change that if now you're going to have the default key, correct? This is kind of like password Cisco. You need to change that, all right? The other keys and stuff related with SSH and TLS, that's important too. Like, for example, we got a lot of penetration tests telling us, oh, you are exposing certain old TLS versions, old ciphers or old options. Actually, there's a lot of, if you go man ncsconf, TLS, SSL actually is the way you configure. But there's tons of options. And we keep this updated all the time. One of the things we don't yet have support is for TLS 1.3, and the reason has to do not that, you know, it's also pretty new regarding our support system, particularly in the Erlang database, VM. But of course, as it gets available in Erlang, you're going to get that added. Now, the recent penetration test I was part of, there was a lot of questions about our HTTPS headers, right? And which one we allow, we don't allow, we expose. And actually all of that is extremely configurable in NSO, also in the NCSConf file. So take a look at that if you get some of those reports from your security teams. Okay. Now, when you are managing NSO, one thing that you always want to take care of the alarms. And actually, we've been working. I don't know if there's somebody from Bowie here. So we got a lot of customers who was like, you need to tell me which is the recommended action. So we work and we add that to the admin guide. So for every alarm, now you do have a recommended action. So there's a lot of now new information. And just to help you dealing with that, those alarms that NSO is gonna take. Of course, you got criticality, etc. The alarms are exposed via SNMP track, so you can export that to your system. But actually, we have also login. But now, remember that I mentioned that we have in RESTconf, we always had netconf notification, but now it's simpler. If you got your alarm system wants to prefers instead of getting stuff unformatted in Trackway to get nice JSON formats. With now that we have RESTconf events, correct, you can actually get those through subscribing to the alarm string using the RESTconf alarm string. Okay, no, yeah, so there's a gap on the Python API when you want to do because you can create your own alarms. So somebody who is building services can actually create alarms in NSO, correct? The only thing is that alarm API, yeah, so it's still only in Java and not in Python. No, come on, 3 minutes? Okay. Yeah, backup, that's, one of the things backup is not HA, so you typically, in backup you got a picture. You still need it, because particularly when you want to go back in time to see what it was. But backups are photos every certain amount of hours or days. But it's not HA, because you're going to miss any if you want, you're going to miss any commits between those two backups. So one of the ways you solve that is actually to have a slave in HA that actually works as a disaster recovery. So for monitoring NSO, that's a big problem. That's a big thing, I said, not a problem. But I think it's important to understand what should I be monitoring, and we have many times what customer does is they have like hosted daemons that they buy for certain providers. So they have monitoring like sensors that they put in their servers. And basically, they can run, for example, NCS state. But the question is, okay, we got huge output. What should I care about? So I try to summarize what I would recommend that to care about. Looking at call points who are saying that no register, looking at logs that are taking very long, looking at things like memory CPU on this, making sure that demos are up, making sure all the VMs are up. That's the kind of things you want to look. Now, from the logging perspective, we got plenty of logs, but this is something we've been working on. We created a new audit network log. It's pretty interesting because, we have this problem that from a top-down perspective, you get a commit. To know from what commit, which were the changes done, it was kind of complex, correct? So now we are able to actually show you from one commit, from one user, from one transaction ID, correct, for each one of the devices, which are the changes that have been done. And we're working on connecting this with LSA. So from a top LSA node, can I get logs of everything that happened in my distributed environment? And that's extremely important, and we just take a look at that. Now, I'm late, but I think it's the biggest issue is, now, as you work with NSO, you level out, you do packet reload 300 times a day, but when you are in production, upgrades becomes a very labor-intensive work, correct? And the reality is that in NSO we have different type of, let's say, upgrade. We got major release, minor release, packet reloads, and just redeploys of the VMs, correct? So one thing in the major release is that you need to recompile the package, and typically you don't do this you do that hopefully once a year, but typically customers are doing this even once every 2 years. Now, when you do minor, you shouldn't need, when you move to the third digit, another third digit, typically will not require package to be recompiled, so that's nice. But it still needs to be done in a maintenance window. You still need to, it still is a software upgrade. Now, the one thing is when you do package reload, correct? And the thing is, there's a lot, this is one of the points I want to write about helping you understanding what happens when you do a packet reload, what's NSO doing in a packet reload. But in reality, there's a lot of validation that needs to happen. You are changing the database schema, correct? You're supposed to be changing, if the young model change, you're changing the database schema. So of course, there's a lot of validations that are going on, and a lot of things that are going on. So that's still I think one of the issues people tell me that, of course, this needs to happen still in a maintenance windows. And you hear that it takes 1, 2, 3 hours because you need to back up, you need to, So of course, just be aware that something you do every day in your development environment, when you go into production, it's actually, it is an impact, service impact from an NSO perspective activity. What is less impactful is to do the redeploy of a VM. So, and that can be done per package. So that particularly when you are in the Python world, in Java, you got single VM, and that's way less impactful. Now, Yeah, so one of the things about upgrade is that everything we learn about CI/CD, etc., when you need to plan upgrades, that really pays off. You know, the idea of being able to test things on the new version of Nets or of NSO, that's extremely important. Now, so okay, so conclusion. We're gonna hear more. We want to hear more about you. So the IT persona is important from us, and you know, we are investing in this area because we're seeing this shift where, you know, it is kind of more and more. It is a critical application in your environment, and we need to make sure that we are up to date with the latest requirements. Fantastic. Okay. So with this, I don't know if you can, one question maybe? Can we do one question?
Yeah, sure.
I know I'm 10 minutes late. Sorry for that. Sorry? Yeah. Sorry, Larry. Who's next? So one of the things is we had the meet the engineer on tomorrow morning to deep dive on any aspect, and it's more also to give us feedback. Extremely important. Yes.
Yeah, I actually have two questions. The first one is regarding to NSO HA. Does the VIP is mandatory, even though after the HA setup has become active, you don't see the virtual interface got created, but you still have your replica all set, and the HA setup is still working even without the HA interface getting created.
Yeah. So you remember the 3 tiers? So for the first tier, you don't need virtual IP. Okay, just to be clear. So for the first tier, what I mean is, to get the TCP connection between the two, the proprietary protocol to get the replica that can be synchronous or asynchronous, you don't need virtual IP, you don't need HA framework, nothing, correct? That's the point. But of course, if you want to do the automatic switchover, you need a virtual IP to have both servers answering to a single IP, and that's one of the reasons you need root to do certain installations.
Yeah, but even without that virtual IP interface got created, you can still do the auto slave failover once you have the HTTP package.
Okay, we may take that with the HCC. Is there any HCC developer here? But actually, there's going to be one tomorrow.
Sure.
It could be about it. So, yeah.
The second one is regarding to the NCT command tool. It is recommended for the customer to using the NCT because it comes along with the NSO, right?
I don't think we recommend anything in particular. My recommendation is use what's best for you. And again, as I said, many people we got a policy, we do everything with Puppet, okay? But I'm just saying that the tool is there, take a look, because it can save you time, even in creating those playbooks, correct? So you don't need to enter NSO and do commands in NSO, or or using the NSO CLI to do command. It's already there, correct? So we use it, for example, also internally in our, for testing our applications. The guys that do function packs, and we use it extensively. There's some ideas also to enhance it. So my recommendation is look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually using it, and it's pretty good. So yeah.
So if you got ideas, let us know. But first, if you use it, let us know, because sometimes we don't get the feedback, and that's important, because we know we use it, we think it's useful for us. But the second, if you got any feedback or comment, that would be great. I'm gonna put that in my I want to do some sort of survey.
Thank you.
I have a question with regards to upgrade. So I know that through the guide it says that you can use Java packages, you can use the CDB directory if you have data that you want to load merge during the upgrade. Is it okay to use scripts as well in certain cases?
To use what?
Scripts instead of if you want to do reload in the middle, or you have specific paths that you want to check for. Is it okay to use scripts during the upgrade process?
Yeah. So let's understand a little bit. So when you are upgrading from one version to another version, typically you don't do, you just change you install the new version, you change some symbolic link, and when you boot NSO with a new version, NSO will by default do something to do the migration. Okay?
So my bad there. I didn't mean just NSO upgrade. Sorry about that. I didn't explain it very well. My point was that if we have our own packages and our own services, I was, talking about upgrade for those services as well, not just plain NSO packages.
Correct. But what I mean, of course, before upgrading, I'm talking about upgrading production. Before upgrading production, you have tested your packages with the new version.
Okay.
You may have to recompile your package. Sometimes when you are changing a major version, there are non-backward compatible changes, so you may need to change code. So once all of that is tested, once you're going to be upgrading, of course, typically you just boot NSO with a new version. However, there are situations where there are changes in the database and you want to manipulate your data. You want to manipulate the database in the middle of the upgrade. So you want to influence how NSO performs the upgrade. To do that, we offer you a Java API, which is the upgrade API. And I think it's only available in Java right now.
Yes,
okay?
So that is in Java, or the other way of doing that, based on the NSO guide, is to put any XML files in the CDP directory that get bookmarked if it is like.
Yes, but that you have less freedom.
Correct.
You can do creative.
So my point was, if in certain cases the Java package upgrade, for performance reasons or for other reasons, it doesn't seem like it's going to suffice, is it okay to use some scripts in parallel or instead of the Java API that has been provided?
I'm not sure during the upgrade process you can call a script. Maybe some of the guys from development can.
No, but you can do it afterwards to fill in the gaps.
Correct. It's
afterwards.
It's right afterwards. It writes right before.
Yeah, no, but the nice thing about that's the point. The Java upgrade helps you to do things. You go more deeper.
Correct.
Of course, afterwards. Just like we have software upgrade of a router, NSO upgrade has pre-check stuff, post-checks.
Yeah.
So yes, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, is that it?
Thank you.